Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulna. Today we are talking about my top 5 favorite books in Islamic finance. Now, often people ask me to recommend them some kind of books or resources to study Islamic finance, and I think about these things. And today I decided to make a little video to tell you about some of my favorite books that I think in some way encompass most of the important chapters and points regarding Islamic finance. So, Bismillah, let's start. I don't need to mention, of course, first and foremost, as Muslims, the Holy Quran is the most important book of guidance. It contains laws, recommendations, prohibitions, everything that we need to live this life. So most of our rulings, ethos, and recommendations come from this book. But we are not talking today about this particular book. This deserves its own program. Today we are talking about other books that are very useful, and I hope that you will find them useful as well. So, first book that I always recommend, one of the most important books, is by our dear Mufti Taqi Usmani, very famous Muslim scholar, who is well known. He was a jurist and a judge on Supreme Court. Most of you remember in 90s when we had a famous case in Pakistan where the Supreme Court was deciding on the ruling regarding riba. And Mufti wrote a book about that subject, which is very interesting even today. And I should include this book as well, because it deals with such important topics of riba at that time when bankers would say, we believe riba is prohibited, just we don't know what is riba. So I feel that this same issue is repeating today. So Mufti is very famous, a scholar following these issues for a long time. And beside a book on the historic judgment of riba, he also, after a global financial crisis, wrote beautiful paper Points to Ponder, where he is discussing core reasons for economic crisis, whether it's a riba or speculations and things like that. I forget to mention that in this little video, I'm not saying any particular book is better than other, although we are going from 5, 4, 3 to number 1. But it doesn't mean that any one of these books is better or worse. It's just 5 books that holistically make one whole piece. So, Introduction to Islamic Finance, book by Mufti Taqi Usmani, is one of those books that deals with the core concepts of Islamic finance in easy to understand, deals with all of the transactions and clearly explain what's the difference between conventional banking and Islamic one. When we're dealing with money for money transaction and generate some profit versus when we engage in the real economy and making money from engaging in buying and selling assets and things like that. So that book is available on Mufti's personal website. You can download it as a PDF, and that's book number 5. The next book that I think every serious student of Islamic finance should take time to study is Sharia Standards by Ayofi. Now, Ayofi is a standard setting industry body, very well respected, working with key scholars, dealing with a lot of issues when it comes to standardizing the rules and regulation for Islamic finance. Many countries choose voluntarily to follow these rules. Now, this standard deals with many different issues. In fact, every situation that you can come across in finance industry, trading in currency, credit cards, musharaka, murabaha, loans, leases, zakat, waqf, anything you can think of, 50, 60 almost topics, they are all in detail explained in this topic. And what I love about this book is that at the end of each standard which highlights each point very specifically, what to do, what not to do. It gives you Islamic rules regarding those standards. So if you, for example, you flip and you go subject of, let's say, leasing, appendix B, Sharia basis for this standard, it would tell you that it would give you a verse, for instance, on leasing, where Allah Almighty says, and verse is that said one of the daughters, "O my father, engage him or hire him on wages." Or another verse, "If you had wished, surely you could have extended some recompense for it." So we see that they go directly to primary sources and they extract the rules and the wisdoms for legitimacy of their ruling. So the book is excellent read. Of course, IOFI doing fantastic work. They have various courses. They have a number of different books that go into more details and case studies. So standard is available for free at IOFI's website. I will put a link in the description. Okay, let's get into more of these books. Number 3. All right. So this particular book is very interesting book. I find it fascinating. It's called Financial Transactions in Islamic Jurisprudence, and there are 2 volumes. Okay, so it's written by Dr. Zuhaili. It's a beautifully written book that deals with so many issues in terms of finance from all schools of thoughts. And this is what I particularly find quite interesting, that author collected in almost 1,000+ pages on every little details in terms of transactions, all kinds of opinions. And so you just open the things that, selling of what you don't have. Is it the fact that subject matter doesn't exist, or that there is uncertainty of a delivery? Then it goes in all kinds of opinions and different kinds of subtopics. And I find that this is a must read together with Sharia standards from IOFI for any serious students of Islamic finance who want to explore principles that underpin Islamic finance. And the reason why this is important is when you come to, let's say, new topics, new issues, you need to understand what is the reason for our thinking so that you can apply to some of these contemporary transactions. So I think this is a must read. Again, I'll put the details where you can find this beautiful book. Number 2, and again, I'm not saying this is a ranking of these books. These are, again, my favorite books that I find very useful when I'm putting my courses together, when I'm teaching my students. I find some of these books really useful on a daily basis. I use them as a reference. And together they make up the one whole unit. I would say they cover most of the topics that anybody needs to know. This particular topic, Economic Concepts of Ibn Taymiyyah, is a book by Abdullah Azim Islahi, who wrote this as a part of his PhD dissertation. And it's a very interesting book dealing with the events and life of Ibn Taymiyyah, who live in very interesting times when people introduced all kinds of new ways of dealing with business and transactions, and a lot of different questions were raised. And Ibn Taymiyyah is quite interesting character in terms of thinking, very, very sharp, very, very innovative in terms of thinking. Some of the points analyzed in book are so advanced, so sophisticated that you can apply them easily in whatever you are analyzing today. And so I think whether you're talking about riba or market mechanisms and the other concept regarding the role of state in economy and money and things like that, we talk about, in economy, Adam Smith and all of these other people, different schools of thought, Austrian school of thought. I think Ibn Taymiyyah should have his own school of thought when it comes to economy. And just to see how really advanced some of his thinking is, in one of these points, he, for instance, is talking about how the states, when they mint the coin, they should not do it for the profit. Minting coin other than gold and silver should be for sake of a public good and not to debase currency. And so he talks about the fact that if the state is minting the coin, they should pay from Beitul Mal in order to preserve really the salary and objective production of this important public good, which is money or currency. So these ideas, when we today look at inflation, look at all of the questions of whether it's a crypto or any other way we use money or make money privately or as a state, these points are very important to be understood. So this is one of those books that I definitely recommend. And the last book, number one, again, really book that I recommend to everyone. This is the first book that I recommend, genuinely. Yes, I love Mufti Usmani's book. I think that's my all-time favorite. I teach this book. Actually, it forms the basis with all the other material. This forms the basis of the courses that I teach. But this particular book, Understanding Islamic Finance by Professor Dr. Muhammad Ayub, I find this book to be one of those books that is a result of some really serious, hard thinking, well thought out, presented in a way where it covers really everything you need to know about Islamic finance, all the core concepts. And what I particularly love is just the way that all of these topics are approached. From the introduction and objectives of the Sharia, maqasid of Sharia, understanding Islamic economics, main prohibitions, avoiding what is prohibited and unethical and so on, and then going into the Islamic law of contract, business transactions, how things work, so mechanics of everything. And then going more into commercial law, modes of financing. You have everything that you can think of from, takaful, securitization, sukuk, even some criticism of Islamic finance and the way forward. And this is exactly how I put my course together. I find this to be the most efficient way to teach someone rules of Islamic finance, is to go exactly this way, particularly focusing on the contracts, transactions, and prohibitions. And that opens the way for the student to understand why we do things that we do. So that's my number one book. And I think in totality, all 5 of these books, I would probably be using more than any other book on Islamic finance. And there are many books everywhere. So what I would like to know is, what are some of your favorite books when it comes to this topic? And if you enjoy this, please share this video with those that might be interested. We are also doing very shortly an Islamic finance course that will utilize much of the information from these books. Links are in the description. You can check it out. And inshallah, I will see you in our next video. Assalamu alaikum.